Thanks. So I do invite you to just close your eyes along with me if you care to, if that's comfortable. And let's just take some nice deep breaths together. One of the things you might have heard me say, because I picked it up from somebody I heard say it, that it's interesting what we do with language. And when we think about breath and we think about focusing on the breath and taking a nice deep breath, is that really accurate? It's really, we are receiving a breath. So let's just think about that for a moment or two as we experience our bodies breathing. Sometimes we have an intention through the breath to become present, and be present is what I want to chat for a couple of minutes about here in our warm-up tonight. So of course, spiritual workout is about what does our willingness to live consciously look like in the nitty-gritty of every minute of every hour of every day. We work with these 15 concepts, and the whole point is to anchor them into our physical human experiences and act from them. In other words, not just believe them, but practice them. So be present. Be present. That is one of the concepts with which we work, as we're saying. It's sort of an admonition, more so than a belief, right? And so what does be present mean? And what does it look like in the course of everyday life and living? If we are thinking that be present is really just something that applies to us when we're on the yoga mat or we're meditating, then that's a rather limited view of the concept. There's nothing wrong with how that concept shows up in those ways. But I want to talk tonight about how else it can show up. So the first word that comes to mind with the practice of being present is acceptance. Pure, total, utter acceptance of what is. Here I am in a situation not at all to my liking. I don't know how I got here. Or here I am again for the umpteenth millionth time, or whatever it is. That if we're really practicing presence, then then it is incumbent upon us to not resist anything that's happening. When I was in graduate school a million years ago, learning to be a therapist, and we had a whole section on the 12-step program, and we had to read the big blue book. And to this day, there's one paragraph that popped out to me from that whole book. I cannot quote it here. I could probably find it if somebody followed up with me and asked. But there's an entire paragraph that talks about non-acceptance as really the root of every problem that a person could or would have. So other words that come into play here are resistance, right? So if we are resisting what is, we're not accepting what is. And if we're not accepting what is, we are not being present. Now, this also then starts to lead us into, well, I don't want to accept everything as it is because then I'm condoning something. But of course, this has nothing to do with condoning anything. This just has to do with non-resistance from a very spiritual place, saying everything just is. So the next idea that comes up in relation to resistance is judgment. So if I'm purely accepting everything as it is, whether I like it or not, then I'm in non-resistance and I'm in non-judgment, which means I am accepting everything as it is. So that can sometimes be problematic for us for the reasons that we just said, that we don't want to condone anything. So it's not about condoning anything. There's another spiritual workout concept that, for me anyway, I think this comes into play when we're talking about presence, which also is going to link into taking responsibility. If I'm already living a life where I'm taking responsibility for everything and anything that shows up in my life, not so much for it showing up in my life, but for my willingness to not resist it, to accept it, to take responsibility for it. Again, it's not my fault that whatever's happening is happening. There's nothing for me to be ashamed of. The only thing I need to do is take responsibility, not resist, and accept what's happening. It's from that place of non-resistance, from that place of neutrality, from that place of acceptance, that we then have access in our minds and our hearts to a much broader, deeper, richer array of solutions to what is than we could or would ever possibly have when we're living in resistance, judgment, and blame. So being present in every moment of our lives, especially those moments that are not so appealing to us, that are not so much to our liking, is to be in a state, like I'm saying, of non-resistance, which then allows us to take actions from that place that are going to be more fulfilling than actions and ideas and solutions that make their way to us when we are in resistance, when we are in non-acceptance, and when we are in non-judgment. So let's take a few more breaths, or take notice of the breaths we are receiving. As always, I ask you to just hold on to any of that that feels good and makes sense, and let go of anything else that doesn't. And let's work out some stuff in tonight's workout, whether or not it will have anything to do with being present. We'll see.